end a contract with a vendor without getting a board of directors permission?
No. And that's an easy one.
That's what took place. Deidre has a contract that was approved by the majority of the board.
It wasn't terminated though. That's what I was just reiterating a minute
But
ago.
what gives the board of one or two board of directors the ability to suspend that contract when it was approved by the majority of the board? I don't think that's correct. I think it's required by the board, even though it may be ill feelings with the manager, which I want to disagree. That has to be done by the majority of the board of directors.
I believe the question was termination of the contract, and that's what I'm saying is you can't terminate without a board vote. And that's suspension that's why we're discussing the protocol issue.
Suspension is not in my contract.
It is not. And that's why I said a minute ago when the question was raised, it's the president has a lot of broad power under your bylaws and declarations. And the question was whether that exists outside the contract, because the president is the liaison of the contract. There is no termination.
Excuse me, that was something said that was very similar to what you just told me, you would go back to it. So I do want to say something about when the suspension was done one day, the very next day, it's on my phone now. Meet our new manager. I took it off of it's taken off the website, off of Facebook. I don't know who did it. I would assume some of these people that know. I don't know. But I have the pictures and I have it. So if we're talking about doing the right thing, and I have the guy's picture, and I have what it says, meet your new manager. I don't really know where that came from, you know, but I do know that something was leaked, it was already done, and it was in motion, and it was put on Facebook, on Claire Covenant, because I took a picture. I brought it. So, I mean, you know, we're talking about doing things legally and right and not underhanded. See, that's what I can't get over. I just cannot get over a board or whoever did that.
Okay, we're going to continue here because it was not on an association website. I don't even Facebook or know how. Wherever that was, you claim you don't even know either. It says here, the board may recall board members for any reason and a majority of the unit are present at a board meeting. No, I read through that. I think this has to do with what transpired last Tuesday.
You mind if I read it? Well, no, it's fine. I just can't. That was a lot of words.
I think it's about last Tuesday when there was an attempt to
the board may recall
members
board
at a
members for
board
any
meeting.
reason and the majority of owners present. Okay. Yes, I think that's the question is. The question is basically whether you can recall or remove a board member at a special board meeting. And I feel like, just to be clear, no, it has to, recall can be done at either a unit owner meeting or by written recall. And that's what I was saying. Getting a unit owner meeting is very difficult with this many units. That's a very different thing than a special board meeting. Board meetings can change officers. You can't change board members. And if you think about it, it makes sense. You have one standard, which is to elect board members, which is the election you have once a year, which requires a majority vote, or plurality, excuse me, of these votes cast across the entire association. If board members could freely remove other board members, or even whatever unit owners happen to show up to an individual board meeting, that would create total chaos that at one special board meeting, there might be 12 unit owners who don't like one board member, and so they vote to remove them, and then the next week, 20 different unit owners. That's why it is that way, is to avoid, if you have a minority of board members, like 2 of them, that the 7 wouldn't just remove the other 2. So if you think about it that way, it makes a lot of intuitive sense why recall must meet the same standards as election.
Okay, now we'll move on to...
What was left off is that by our bylaws, Act 4, directors and Section 3 removal states that if it's a board meeting and people are there, like we were, there's a special call meeting, and they asked about this, and they took a vote of the membership in here, which this bylaw states that by 50% of the members present, they can be removed. Now, I don't say that you had to pick and choose, but it had to come originally from a board member, which they did.
And I was asked specifically about this provision. It's in my memorandum, and respectfully, that's not actually what it says.
Well, we got-
Okay,
Article 4,
yes, Article 4, Section 3.
what does it say?
It actually points out that any time after the first annual meeting of the membership,
Right,
at any duly convened regular or special meeting,
if it was.
no, it's a special meeting of the board. That's what I'm trying to get at. There's a very big distinction between board meetings and unit owner meetings. And furthermore, when you read Chapter 718, and this is all in the memorandum, which is now association record that you can all get a copy of, I pointed out 718.112, which talks about bylaws. It talks about recall. And as I was just walking through a minute ago, that provision, the standard for recall is either at a special unit owner or voting member meeting, or it's done by written recall with unit owners voting members. Furthermore, and before I go on, that language is very, very, very similar to what you actually have here. And I get that there's a little ambiguity about what is regular or special meeting, but if you go down to the next sentence, it talks about the affirmative vote of the capital voting members, casting not less than a simple majority of the total votes present. This is talking about a unit owners meeting, okay? A unit owners meeting and a board meeting are not the same. And even if you were to try and say, well, our bylaws are slightly ambiguous, we have a special board meeting with unit owners present, we can cast a vote. Okay, I cited in there, there's case law that you are, and this is why I went through at the very beginning of the meeting, that condominiums are creatures of statute. 718. They exist purely by statute. And there's case law saying, if your declarations or bylaws violate the statute under certain mandatory provisions, they must give way to the statute. Okay, that's what they say. So, first of all, I don't think that this provision means board meetings. I think it means unit owner meetings because it talks about voting members with capital letters, which is the way the statute refers to a meeting of the unit owners. But secondly, even if you were to take the position it's ambiguous, that would require reading into it a legal invalidity. Basically, you would be saying, our bylaws allow us to do something the statute says we can't, which is recall board members at a board meeting. You can't do that. So that question was asked to me, I answered it, and that's the issue is, the provision could be construed as ambiguous. I don't think it is, honestly, but even if you were to take that position, it would require your bylaws to be illegal, and that no court would ever enforce that.
Okay, so we're going to start back around with the directors, so since I'm first on the list.
Unit owner meeting if it's with a board meeting.
No, it's not.
And what is it called?
That's what I'm going over. Unit owner meetings is a very, very, very specific.
I know what it's individually, not like a home system, the classic one. But when a board meets here every month, there are people, residents who attend it. Now, that's what I call a board meeting, but it also includes the people who live here. So, and that's what we did when we decided to do this resolve. So, what's the difference? It's not actually a unit owner meeting, it's a board meeting that unit members are attending to see what's going on and if they agree or disagree.
Well, that's exactly the difference, and that the distinction is you can't take unit owner meeting action at a board meeting with unit owners present. And I don't. It is what it is. Well, I mean, that's the way it is.
We're going to go back around for a second round with the directors, starting with me. An association committee or board, can they make a rule for a condominium unit without a unit owner vote? Can a committee of the board or the board decide every unit has to be blue, or you can only rent to certain people, or you have to keep 3 feet of your fence off the other property so the other people can use it, or does that need to go to unit owners?
It would depend on whether it's allowed for in your declarations and bylaws, or if it is in the rules of the association as approved by the bylaws. So there's 2 things to that. If it's not, and again, we come back to, and this is why it's going to sound the same because it is, 718. The courts have routinely enforced it being, if your statute or the governing documents allow the board to do it, then they can do it. If it's not allowed, then they can't do it. So that would be, the easy answer would be, If whatever you're promulgating is something that's already been envisioned in the declarations, bylaws, and the rules that were there when they passed it, then absolutely. If it's not, if it's something that would change the rights to the unit, then it's not. So it's a fact-based question.
Okay. Short answer of what qualifies as an emergency.
What was your question again?
What was the question?
What qualifies as an emergency? Okay, let me flip so I can try, because I'm going to go back to it. Emergency is defined by statute. It is not a matter of opinion. The statute, and it's pretty much financial. Normally it's acts of God situation. It's very, very, very limited window because it is the only authority that allows the board to get around the notice requirements under the statute and under your bylaw. So it must meet this special exemption. But I'll look and see if it's right here real quick, but it's statutory. What is an emergency?
So it's basically financial. If there's some terrible thing that's going to be go upon the association, and we got to fix quickly.
Or yeah, normally emergencies, the easy one is, like I said, acts of God. If we were to have another hurricane like came through a decade ago, and this place is just getting ransacked, and somebody has to do something now to take emergency action, like giving FEMA the authority to set up a camp or something, that would be an emergency. Whether or not failure to sign a contract until the day we need to file it, not an emergency. So that's the easiest way to do it. Those are the kind of the easy situations.
Okay, move on to Ms. Baumgartner.
Question. On a roll call vote, can one board of director request a roll call vote on a motion?
Whether or not something is a roll call is governed by your rules of procedure. So, and I believe you guys use Robert's Rules of Order, which I'll go ahead and tell you I was probably changed. I mean, Robert's is very arcane, but that's a procedural thing. If it's whatever's in place at the time the vote is taken. So if you use Robert's, it delineates what requires up and down, aye or nays, and what requires a roll call vote. So that's the short answer, is you're governed by procedural guidelines, which are Robert's Rules of Order. Whatever it says for a vote is whatever it is.
Robert's rule says that any director at a time can call for a roll call vote during the vote.
Then that would be the answer. I don't have Robert's.
Nothing else from Ms. Baumgartner. Next would be Ms. Batakis. Nothing from Batakis. Mr. Church, he's over here.
Hey, I don't quite understand what you just said.
Okay.
I believe a roll call vote can be called by any board member on any issue, especially if it's a special issue where I would like to have everybody on the board know how they voted, and every homeowner that happens to be attending to know how every board member voted on a particular issue. I'm the one that called for a roll call vote, and we had a little discussion about that. I believe that as long as one board member calls for a roll call vote, it does not require the vote of the board. And like I said, I called it because I wanted to know how every board member was going to vote on a particular item.
Okay, and as I said, everything is governed by Robert's Rules. This is not a matter of opinion. I think one of the members of the audience said Robert's Rule says anytime someone calls it, you can ask for it. If that's the case, then you would be entitled to do so. As I said, I don't deal with Roberts very often. In fact, every local government and an association I represent, we give them our own form procedural rules because it's 10 pages rather than Roberts, which is a book. I mean, it's arcane. It was designed 300 years ago. But so that if Roberts says anytime someone calls for a roll call vote, it is what it is. But I don't have it in front of me, so it is whatever Roberts says is what it is.
Okay, anything else from Mr. Church? Nothing from Mr. Church. Mr. Fisher? Nothing from Mr. Fisher to Mr. Piscitano. Nothing from Mr. Piscitano. We move to Ms. Rogers. Oh, we're doing quick. Nothing from Ms. Rogers. Mr. Rogers? Nothing from Mr. Rogers to Mr. Singer.
Yes, when we had our election, we were called to take our positions. I believe Ms. Rogers was first, I was second, and we went down the list of setting these people up. there was never a meeting after that or spoke to after that as to whose position you would be. I immediately heard Peter make Miss Rogers the president. I heard another lady on the end who left us that day was made the treasurer. But we as a group never sat down and had a meeting on who was to have what position. It was immediately went right to Peter and right to Miss Rogers, and I'm not sure who came after that. And we left it at that because it was kind of a new day, a new horizon. Instead of saying tomorrow or this afternoon or we'll do it later today, whatever, it was done. And I felt to this day that was wrong. I still question, because had we had a vote on that, it may have changed.
I'll go back to, my understanding is that you had a motion that was seconded and that you had a vote. That's where I said, to some extent, what your records are what they are. If you disagree with the officers, the board has the complete and total discretion sitting at a board meeting to change the officers at any time. And that's what I mean, as the association attorney, that's much cleaner than trying to say we had some sort of illegitimate vote. I mean, that's just a mess the association doesn't need. Versus you can have a majority vote at the next notice board meeting if you want to change the officers. That's the simplest thing to tell you would be, this is not like recalling a board member. The majority.
But because of that type of voting was done, within a few days, a suspension was given to Ms. Rick. If we'd had a meeting, we could have discussed it. The rest of the board members, to some degree, besides the two that already gave themselves the positions to do it. This whole meeting today would not have been necessary. But we are wasting money having you here to tell us something we never had the opportunity to discuss.
I mean, well, to an extent, you're asking me a political question.
Well,
I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole.
maybe political, but you're costing the association money by telling us things that may have been eliminated if the two, or the one who's been here many times, would have gone ahead and followed the rules as he knows them.
Well, all I can say is the rules were followed. Not only is there a video record of the meeting, one of the unit owners asked a question which was misshown, that doesn't the motion have to be voted on separately? And then she may notice there was a motion. I did not make the motion. There was a motion made that was seconded. There was a vote on the motion. The minutes were created. The minutes then came before the board to verify that's truly what happened at the meeting. And the minutes got a unanimous vote from the board as approval that that's actually what happened at the meeting. Now, if you remember something different, then you should probably either review the minutes or see if the video record is still available. Now, on